and between the Taurus and the Gemini, which is 30 degrees, 60 to 30 degrees, and then you have the Gemini 30 to 0 degrees, right here at the hemisphere. So when we look at these regions, specifically, let me pull the map up. So I'll be talking about these regions here of the Indus Valley, Arabia, into Yemen, into the southern coast regions of these locations. Now, when we look at Genesis, the 10th chapter, it first goes in the Genesis 10th chapter into the sons of Japheth. Right? We understand Japheth, and when you look up the Hebrew relevance of these names in this Genesis, the 10th chapter, you'll see that some of these are somehow transliterated into English into a lot of the isles of the Mediterranean, Turkey, into some of these regions where we find the Ashkenazi around Georgia, around the Caucasus Mountains, in these regions, right? The Black Sea and what have you, in some of these regions. Now, when we look at ancient Cush, now the sons of Ham, you got to understand just one thing. A lot of times when people talk about chronology and time, they forget that there's a pre-Diluvian period, a pre-flood period. And, pre-flood, these ancients, at times they're just called ancients, or they're referred to, some people say ancestors, some people actually call them gods, if you will, right? These spirits that existed before the historical periods that we understand from Genesis, from the Tower of Babel, and coming into this time. We understand that these ancients and the sons of Ham and the land of Canaan, when we look at the book of Joshua, and Joshua tells the Israelites after they come out of the land of Egypt, Mitzrayim, which is another one of the sons of Ham, which is separate from Cush, that they would come into the land of Canaan, but that they should not do the ways of people pre-flood. So we understand the pre-flood and the ways of man, and a lot of the things that you see present in the land of Canaan in the prehistoric period. When we look at the copper mines and the minings, a lot of these things are found here in the Americas. So this is why these Cushites are Hecacasuts, Asiatics, if you will, are considered Cushites when we look at the establishing of the civilizations in this region of the Indus Valley into this region of ancient Sumer. Now, if you understand ancient Sumer is a actual Cushite kingdom. So these Asiatics, and this was actual Cushite kingdom in these regions that they had established. Now, when we look at the term Cushite, it says, this is Rawlinson. So it says, this is his interpretation. He's one of the researchers, someone that was one of the first people, not one of the first people, but someone that talked about this, what we're talking about. So it says, Rawlinson was convinced that there was a relationship between Sumerians and Africans. As a result, he used two African languages. One was a Semitic, the other was a Cushite, to decipher the cuneiform writing. So if you don't know what the cuneiform writing is, it's like a silicone imprint of mathematical, sometimes receipts or what have you, different things, transactions that took place amongst this first empire that was developed in ancient Kush, Samaria. When you look at one of the first cities after the flood to be built is built by Nimrod in this Kush. Now, when we understand the prehistoric cities that were built during the time of Enoch and Enoch's building of cities and Canaan, the land of Canaan, and Cain naming Cain making a city for his son. All right, so when we look at the Canaanites and Canaan and Cain and these ancient prehistoric, talking about pre-Diluvian priests that were before Before this, when we look at Genesis 10 and all these different things after Noah, right? After the Noah flood, this is why Joshua mentions to the Israelites before going into the land of Canaan that they must choose this day who they will serve. Will they serve the guys that their forefathers served before the flood? So when we look at these things before the flood, these minds, and you look at Genesis the 4th chapter, and you see the sons of Cain, you see their artistry, their craftsmanship, their development of tools and building. These things are in reference to the Americas. So when we look at the ancient empire, the mound building empire, we understand about mound building, Ame, the prehistoric primordial mound, and all of these different significance with these star systems and these star seeds coming down through the woman. This is why it's important to understand these mythos and these fertility rituals. When we look at the ancient rituals here in America, and the buildings and the structurings according to the same star systems, according to these same agricultural deities, we got to understand that modern Christianity, as we know it, Ethiopians, Cushites, Eritreans, when we look at this modern day narrative that they tried to force upon us of Nipsey Hussle, Arima's asking Edom, right, being somewhat in the narrative of a savior. You have to understand that these ancient Cushites, that these ancients, these are some of the first Christians. So when we look at African spirituality, it is actually a form of Christianity is a lesser form of African spirituality, or it's a form of it. So when we talk about Christianity and Christian dogma, it actually stems from a paganistic, what they call a paganistic African spirituality. So when we look at these things and these ancients and these ancient priesthoods and Nimrod and the establishing of lands and who was to get what land, Genesis the 10th chapter is very essential to these things, because you see the separation from the sons of Noah, his three sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, and the situation with Ham and Noah and uncovering his son's nakedness is key to understanding the land of Canaan and the Americas and their role in this early craftsmanship. So this is why you'll see people today, when they do research on America, they're like, whoa, these things here in America are way more older than anything else, right? Because they are actually pre-Diluvian. They're pre-flood. So this is why, again, Joshua told them before coming into this land of Canaan, into the Americas, that they must choose who they will serve, the gods before the flood or what have you. So when you look at these things in Assyria and these ancient Cushites and ancient Hamites and modern Christianity and African spirituality, you have to understand, look at the Boule and the Bully, the Bull and the Leo, and how time of Taurus and time of coming into this time of May into August, into the crossing over into the layer of Leo, the Ab. In the scriptures it says there would be a highway from Assyria through Egypt into, right, to these different regions. And also Zechariah said, beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, the daughters of my dispersed. So you have to understand these things in context to the beginnings. So the beginnings prehistorically is referring to the pre-flood. And when we look at pre-flood, you have to understand Cain's sons and the use of fire, metal, and mining that you find here in the Lake Superior and these regions here in the Americas. These ancient Asiatics cross the seas, the Pacific, to come into these regions following the solar mythos, to be a part of this new year in regions like Cambodia, Angkor Wat, the new Khmer, to come in and participate in these mythos. So when we look at these Australo-oceanic travelers that came through the use of boats, when you look at the names of this boat here that you'll find on Norma's palette is called Mott. So, that's a whole nother breakdown. But I just wanted to lead into this. I'll go more into later. Peace.